Well, good evening, everyone. I will now call the Tuesday, April 12, 2022 public hearing to order. First up on the agenda is the adoption of this evening's public hearing. Councillor Blanchette, Councillor Pearson, are there any additions to this public hearing? I don't think so. All in favor? It's carried. I will now read aloud the public hearing statement for this evening. Dated April 12th, held at the Village of Valemount Council Chambers, 735 Cranberry Lake Road in Valemount. This public hearing is being convened pursuant to the terms of the Local Government Act prior to consideration of 4 items. Temporary use permit 2201, temporary residential structure at 1301 9th Avenue. Number 2, temporary use permit 2203, temporary residential structure at 1467th Ave. Number 3, temporary use permit 2204, temporary residential structure at 1915 Cranberry Place. And finally, temporary use permit 2205, temporary residential structure at 1122 8th Ave. At a public hearing, any person present who believes they are affected by a matter being considered shall be given an opportunity to be heard on the matter contained in the proposal. Members of the public speaking to the proposal should, at the appropriate time, commence your address to this council by stating your name and simply your area of residence. We do not require your address. At which time you may give us the benefit of your views concerning the proposal. Everyone who deems their interests are affected shall be given the opportunity to be heard at this meeting. No one will be or should feel discouraged from or prevented from making their views known. All who submit comments at this public hearing will restrict their remarks to matters contained in the proposal, and it is my responsibility as chairperson of this meeting to ensure that all remarks are so restricted. At the conclusion of a public hearing, council may, without further notice, give whatever effect council believes proper to the representation made at the meeting. Under item 4, first up, at temporary use permit 2201, 4.1, we have a presentation by staff. Ms. Eddy?
In regards to 4 applications for temporary use permits requesting to permit a temporary structure to be used as a residence for a period of 2 years. The first item is temporary use permit 2201, proposes to allow 1 recreational vehicle to be parked at the property located at 1301 9th Avenue. The property is legally described as Lot 2, District Lot 7355, Caribou District Plan EPP 44330. The proposed application satisfies the requirements outlined in Temporary Residential Structure Policy 83, including water, sewer, power servicing, garbage disposal, and proposed location. The unit is confirmed to have the CSA Z240RV certification required by Policy 83. At the regular council meeting of January 11th, council gave initial approval for the proposed temporary use permit. Since then, adjacent property owners have been notified of the proposal. Affected residents have been invited to provide feedback at tonight's public hearing or via written submissions.
Under 4.2, have there been any written submissions prior to the proceedings?
As of noon today, there were no submissions received.
Thank you. Under 4.3, are there any questions of staff or the proponent by council? Under 4.4, are there any presentations from the public? Again, under 4.4, are there any verbal presentations from the public? For a third and final call, are there any verbal presentations from the public? Q, under 4.5, does the proponent wish to present?
Not really.
Okay.
I'm more than happy with the job that Chris did for me, and there was a couple delays on my part, and she just kept me on board there, so I was happy.
Thank you very much. Seeing how under 4.6 there was no concerns or comments or questions raised by the public, we'll move on to item 5, temporary use permit 2203. proposed RV use at 1467th Ave, and under 5.1, a presentation by staff. Yes.
The second item on tonight's agenda is temporary use permit 2203, proposing to allow one recreational vehicle to be parked at 1467th Avenue. The property is legally described as Lot 13, District Lot 7354, Caribou District Plan 18453, except Parcel A, N17910. The proposed application satisfies the requirements outlined in Temporary Residential Structure Policy 83, including the provision of water, sewer, and power servicing, garbage disposal, and the proposed location. The RV holds the CSA Z240 RV certification confirmed by the building inspector. The application was given initial approval at the March 22nd regular council meeting. Since then, adjacent property owners have been notified and affected residents have been invited to provide feedback via written submissions or at tonight's public hearing.
And under 5.2, have there been any written submissions received prior to the proceedings?
None as of noon today.
Thank you. Are there any questions of staff or to the proponent by council? Under 5.4, are there any verbal presentations from the public? A second call, verbal presentations from the public. Third and final call, are there any verbal presentations from the public? If the proponent is present, do they wish to present? Seeing how they didn't present and there were no questions or verbal presentations from the public, we'll move on to item 6. Temporary use permit 2204, proposed RV use at 1915 Cranberry Place. 6.1, presentation by staff. Ms. Eddy, good to have you back.
Just stay here. The next item, temporary use permit 2204, proposes to allow one recreational vehicle parked at 1915 Cranberry Place. The property is legally described as Lot A, except part subdivided by Plan BCP 24180, District Lot 7354, Caribou District Plan PGP 43223. The proposed application satisfies the requirements outlined in Policy 83, including the provision of water, sewer, power servicing, and garbage disposal. The proposed unit is confirmed to have the CSA Z240 RV certification, and the proposed location is compliant with Policy 83. At the regular council meeting of March 22nd, council gave initial approval for the proposed temporary use permit, and adjacent property owners have been notified of the proposal and invited to provide feedback at tonight's public hearing or via written submissions.
Thank you very much. Under 6.2, have there been any written submissions received prior to the proceedings?
None as of noon today.
Thank you. Are there any questions of staff or the proponent by council? Councillor Pearson.
So this just popped into my head, and I don't know if this is the time, but I'm curious. These seem to be a unit-specific temporary use permit as per the sticker and everything being applicable to the unit that's parked there. How does that process work if that renter changes? Do they have to reapply or?
Ms. Eddy?
Sure.
From that podium, if you wouldn't mind.
Yep.
Just so those at home can hear your fabulous response.
So if they wish to change out the unit, we just go through a staff process. They provide us with the pictures of the RV, the CSA certification, and all of that information, and then we will update their permit. At the meeting, we are more approving the use rather than the structure itself, but we want to ensure that the structure does have the CSA certification.
Okay. Yeah, no, it's just, I was thinking about the first application. It's like, okay.
Yeah.
No, thank you.
Clarity resolved?
Clarity resolved.
Thank you. Are there any further questions of staff or to the proponent by council? Are there any verbal presentations from the public under 6.4? Second call for verbal presentations from the public. Third and final call, verbal presentations from the public. Under 6.5, if the proponent is present, do they wish to present? With no presentation from the proponent or comments raised by the public, we'll move on to item 7. Temporary use permit 2205, proposed RV use at 1122 8th Avenue. First up.
So the final item is temporary use permit 2205, proposing to allow one recreational vehicle to be parked at 1122 8th Avenue. The property is legally described as Lot 7, Block 3, District Lot 7355, Caribou District Plan 15883. The proposed application satisfies the requirements outlined in Temporary Residential Structure Policy 83 for the provision of water, sewer, power, and garbage disposal. The building inspector has confirmed the unit to have the CSA Z240 RV certification. At the regular council meeting of March 22nd, council gave initial approval for the proposed temporary use permit. Since that time, a minor amendment has been made to the application. The applicant discovered the door of the RV will be oriented to face the neighbor property to the west if it's parked in the proposed location on the site plan. The applicant provided staff with confirmation from the neighbors that they approve the proposed door location, and the application meets all other location requirements outlined in Policy 83, including the setbacks. Adjacent property owners have been notified of the proposal and have been invited to provide feedback at tonight's public hearing.
And under 7.2, have there been any written submissions received by prior to the proceedings?
As of noon today, none were received.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Eddy. Are there any questions of staff or the proponent by council? Are there any verbal presentations from the public? Second call for verbal presentations from the public. Third and final call for verbal presentations from the public. Is the proponent present and do they wish to present? Seeing how there are no questions raised by the public, questions or comments, nor a presentation from the proponent, I will now adjourn this public hearing. Thank you. And I'll now call the Tuesday, April 12th, 2022 regular meeting of council to order. First up on the agenda, 2.1, adoption of the agenda. Councillor Blanchette, Councillor MacLean, are there any additions? Sorry, I will now ask council that this agenda be adopted as amended to add late item 8.12, appointments to the VCF VIP Board of Directors. You're okay with that, Councillor Blanchette? Councillor Pearson? Okay, thank you. Are there any further additions or amendments? Council reports. All in favor? Thank you. 3.1, adoption of the minutes of the previous regular meeting of council and looking to resolve that they be adopted. Councillor Pearson, Councillor MacLean, are there any errors or omissions arising? All in favor? It's carried. No delegations this evening. 6.1, there is a UBCM resolution pricing policy for community force that I would like to send to NCLGA as a late resolution and to be submitted to UBCM for their convention. Whereas the tabular stumpage rate system that currently applies to community forest agreements provides the means through which community forests innovate, operate in contentious areas, invest in long-term forest stewardship, and provide jobs and other benefits to their communities. And whereas the ability of community forests to innovate and invest in community priorities, including climate change adaptation, wildfire risk reduction, ecosystem restoration, old growth management, recreational infrastructure improvement, and community economic development relies on the current stumpage rates. And whereas any change to the current tabular stumpage policy that results in an increased stumpage rates and additional administrative burden for community forest tenures will greatly reduce and undermine the capacity of community forests to provide a key socio-economic benefits to the communities that they support. The tabular stumpage policy enables community forest agreement holders to implement modernized forest policies and to meet the full range of community objectives while operating viable businesses. Therefore, be it resolved that the province of British Columbia maintain the tabular rate structure for community forest agreements. Councillor Blanchette, Councillor Pearson, that the resolution be submitted on behalf of Valemount, Village of Valemount as a late resolution to NCLGA and to the UBCM at their convention in September. Discussion. All in favor? Carried. Is there anything in the reading file folks would like to bring to surface? Councillor Pearson?
Yeah, just a quick comment on item number 5, correspondence regarding the low-speed electrical vehicle. Just to comment that I think it was my contact with you that sort of brought this to light, and I mean, it's great news that it's an option, but when I first saw it, I mean, optically, it just makes it so inviting for somebody on a side-by-side. So, I mean, kudos to them. I mean, it's a great option, and maybe we can see more people doing it.
Yeah, I mean, more so than just say street-specific exemptions like you see in Chase and Qualicum. Is there anything else folks would like to bring to surface? Councillor Pearson, can I ask you to, as chair of the Tourism Valemount, take number 6 back to your next board meeting? See if there's any entertainment to endorse or to donate to the Quad Riders ATV Association for their AGM.
Thank you. Yeah, I was going to mention that as well on behalf of tourism, so thank you.
Thank you. Third and final call? Just kidding. We're moving forward anyways. Administrator reports. 8.1, building inspection report, permit values for March 2022, that the report be received. Councillor Pearson, Councillor MacLean, any discussion around receipt?
Wow.
Yeah, that daycare, hey? It's gonna be a banner year, I think, for building permits. And further discussion? All in favor? It's carried. 8.2, bylaw enforcement summary report, March 2022, that the report be received. Councillor Blanchette, Councillor Pearson, discussion on receipt. Councillor Blanchette?
I'd just like to say, I was looking at the open burning bylaw and there have been no infractions, so yay us. Yeah, way to go, Valemount.
The snow just did leave, so,
Hey, take it when we get it.
yeah,
I was quite pleased to see that.
awesome. Further discussion? All in favor of receipt? It's carried. 8.3, low-speed vehicle report, that it be received. Councillor Pearson, Councillor Blanchette, discussion on the LSV amendment to the Transport Canada Vehicle Code. It's not a golf cart. It's got seat belts. And there are certain conditions in which they cannot operate. No. Further discussion? All in favor? It's carried. 8.4, Columbia Basin Trust Community Initiatives and Affected Areas Program. CBT, CIP, AAP funding recommendations will be entertained as a block this evening. Councillor
I must
MacLean?
recuse myself, I have a conflict.
Conflict on,
I have a conflict on the climbing wall. I own the building in which it's proposed to be housed.
thank you very much, appreciate that. So as a block, several recommendations from the Columbia Basin Trust Adjudication Committee. The committee, thank you very much, has several recommendations for us. And they are that the Senior Citizens Housing Society received $99,500 for their kitchen project, Valemount Cares Commercial Kitchen, that they be approved. The Yellowhead Outdoor Recreation Association received $18,000 for their project, snowmobile and groomer replacement, that it be approved. That the Valemount Curling Club received $5,054.74 for their project, kitchen fire suppression system upgrade, that it be approved. That the Valemount Entertainment Society received $35,392 for their project, VCTV Channel 7 conversion to digital phase 1 of 2, that it be approved. That the Valemount Lions Club received $35,763 for their project, near roof and exit door for the Lions Hall, that it be approved. That the Valemount Climbing Club received $124,000 even for their project, Valemount Climbing Club Phase 2, it be approved. And the Valemount Ski Society received the remainder of the funding in the amount of $38,848.98 for their project, a community yurt, that it be approved. What is Council's wish? Councillor Blanchette, Councillor Pearson, that the 7 projects receive funding from the Community Initiatives and Affected Area Program. Discussion. Councillor Blanchette.
I'd like to thank the committee for all the hard work. We've all been on that committee, and we know it's a lot, so thank you to them. And to congratulate all of these societies. There's going to be some good stuff done in town, and it's nice to see in and around the area.
Indeed, Councillor, go ahead, Councillor. Madam Administrator.
I would just like to thank Tracy for all the work she put into this as well. She did a wonderful job.
Way in the back. Thank you very much. Further discussion? All in favor? It's carried. Could somebody grab Councillor MacLean? So as a block, the 7 projects have been approved for funding, as recommended from the committee. 8.5, the 2022 municipal election appointment of officers. A couple of recommendations here. They need to be separate. That Carleena Shepherd, Deputy Corporate Officer, be appointed Chief Election Officer for the 2022 general local election. Councillor Blanchette, Councillor Pearson, discussion on our Chief Election Officer. Are you sure you don't want to run for council?
I'm positive, thank you.
Because that is a condition. Once you have this, you can't run for council.
I'll give up the dream.
Further discussion? All in favor? It's carried. Now Tracy Dennis, Grant Clerk, be appointed Deputy Chief Election Officer for the 2022 general local election. Councillor MacLean, Councillor Blanchette. Discussion? Same question. Mrs. Dennis, are you sure that in 2022 you will not be seeking a seat at this table?
Very sure.
Okay. If there's no further discussion, all in favor? It's carried. We'll now conduct an oath of office. For both participants, Ms. Shepherd, thank you very much, Chief Election Officer, and Mrs. Tracy Dennis, Deputy Chief Election Officer.
So I'm just going to ask Carleena to read this.
I, Carleena Shepherd of Valemount, BC, do solemnly affirm that I will faithfully and impartially exercise the powers and perform the duties of Chief Election Officer. I have not received and will not accept any inducement to exercise the powers or perform the duties of Chief Election Officer otherwise than impartially and in accordance with the Local Government Act, or to otherwise subvert the election. I will preserve the secrecy of the ballot in accordance with Section 123 of the Local Government Act, and I am not and will not become a candidate, representative, or financial agent while holding the position of an election official.
And this is declared by before me in Valemount to this day. So she's going to sign her oath now. And then we'll call on Tracy to come and do her oath.
Steal that.
Was that? Get you to read the
That
same
happens with
thing.
every oath.
Yeah.
So I, Tracy Dennis of Valemount, BC, do solemnly affirm that I will faithfully and impartially exercise the powers and perform the duties of Deputy Chief Election Officer. I have not received and will not accept any inducement to exercise the powers or perform the duties of Deputy Chief Election Officer otherwise than impartially and in accordance with the Local Government Act, or to otherwise subvert the election. I will preserve the secrecy of the ballot in accordance with Section 123 of the Local Government Act, and I am not and will not become a candidate, representative, or financial agent while holding the position of an election official.
If you'd like to sign that. And this is declared today in Valemount by Tracy. So you have your election appointments done.
Thank you very much. Carleena's pen. You shouldn't have taken it up there. You can have that. It's our gift to you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Hadford. 8.6, temporary use permit 2201 at 1301 9th Avenue. Recommendation here, following a public hearing, the temporary use permit 2201 at 1301 9th Avenue, legally described as Lot 2, District Lot 7355, Caribou District Plan EPP 44330, describing a temporary residential structure for up to 2 years, be approved. Councillor Blanchette, Councillor MacLean, discussion? All in favor? It's carried. 8.7, temporary use permit 2203 at 1460 7th Avenue. Recommendation here, following the public hearing, temporary use permit 2203 at 1460 7th Avenue, legally described as Lot 13, District Lot 7354, Caribou District Plan 18453, except parcel AN 17910, proposing a temporary residential structure for up to 2 years, be approved. Councillor Blanchette, Councillor Pearson, discussion? All in favor? It's carried. 8.8, temporary use permit 2204, 1915 Cranberry Place. Recommendation that temporary use permit following public hearing 2204 for 1915 Cranberry Place, legally described as Lot A, except part subdivided by Plan BCP 24180, District Lot 7354, Caribou District Plan PGP 43223, proposing a temporary residential structure for up to 2 years, be approved. Councillor Blanchette, Councillor Pearson, discussion? All in favor? It's carried. 8.9, temporary use permit 2205 at 1122 8th Avenue. The recommendation here that temporary use permit 2205 following public hearing for 1122 8th Avenue, legally described as Lot 7, Block 3, District Lot 7355, Caribou District Plan 15883, proposing a temporary residential structure for up to 2 years, be approved. Councillor Blanchette, Councillor MacLean, discussion? All in favor? It's carried. Item 8.10, temporary use permit 2206 at 1155 14th Avenue. Recommendation here that temporary use permit 2205 at 1155 14th Avenue, legally described as Lot 36, District Lot 7355, Caribou District Plan 26762, proposing a temporary residential structure for up to 2 years, be given initial approval. Councillor Pearson, Councillor Blanchette. Discussion. Councillor Pearson.
Point of clarification. The title on that is 2206 and the recommendation is 2205.
Should be 06.
06,
Sorry.
yeah.
That temporary use permit 2206 be given initial approval. Thank you for the point of order. You're okay with that, Councillor Pearson? Yeah. Councillor Blanchette? Discussion? All in favor? It's carried. 8.11, request for amendment to street vendor bylaw. Recommendation here that public consultation requirement for street vendor 2 alternative locations remains in place. Councillor MacLean, Councillor Blanchette, discussion. Councillor Blanchette.
I was just wondering if, instead of every 3 years, he has to go through this again, how would it be if it was every 6 years, so he'd have to do it twice? Because he's already been doing it for a while, right? And he has to keep renewing his permit, is that correct?
Councillor. Ms. Shepherd. You just took your oath, I thought
Yeah.
maybe.
He actually has to renew his permit every year.
Okay,
So it's like a business license, and every year he has to renew and pay the fee. This is to operate in a separate location than we've designated in the bylaw.
right.
And we want to consult the public every 3 years,
Okay, that's where I got the three years
right?
from.
And
Okay.
we stick to a temporary use process, just as any other temporary use. So we want to consult the public every 3 years as residents and
Businesses will
business owners
rotate.
will change around, and so they need to have their say.
Okay, so every 3 years, we do an everybody process, but he still has to renew his license every year,
Correct.
right? Okay. Sorry, I was confused then with the 3 years. Okay,
Clarity received?
yes.
Good.
Okay.
Further discussion? Thank you for raising that, Councillor. And thank you, Ms. Shepherd. Further discussion? All in favor? It's carried. 8.12, appointments to the Valemount Community Forest and Valemount Industrial Park Board of Directors. Recommendation here that report be received. Councillor Blanchette, Councillor Pearson. Discussion? All in favor? It's carried. Section 9, bylaws and policies, 9.1. Village of Valemount zoning bylaw 847-2021, amendment bylaw 858, 2022. Recommendation here that Village of Valemount zoning bylaw 847-2021, amendment bylaw 858, 2022 be given first and second reading. Councillor Blanchette, Councillor Pearson, discussion. Is there any questions of the planner at this point? All in favor? It's carried. 9.2, Village of Valemount leave of absence policy number 15, proposed amendment. Recommendation here that leave of absence policy number 15, 2013 be approved as amended to permit employees on sick leave to pay back benefit contributions after a leave of absence rather than prepaying beforehand. Councillor Pearson, Councillor Blanchette. Discussion. Give some flexibility for staff that are on long-term, short-term. All in favor? It's carried. Is there any new business? I don't think so. Are there any notices of motion to come forward? Then on to council reports, 12.1. Councillor MacLean, you're closest.
On March 29th, I had a Columbia River Treaty Local Governments Committee Zoom meeting regarding BC Hydro operations, their operations update. In March, I haven't written the date here, along with the rest of council. I think it was the 28th. We attended the housing assessment meeting. 29th, okay. On the 30th, we actually had been looking forward back to the Columbia River Treaty stuff. We had been looking forward to having a CBRAC meeting held in Valemount on May 3rd and 4th.
That's a good month to have it.
That was the idea, and now it will have to be rescheduled because it conflicted with the Bringing the Salmon Home Festival. So,
Equally as important.
yeah, later in the month. On Sunday, April 3rd and Sunday, April 10th, I, along with the rest of council, participated in person interviews with potential chief administrative officers.
Excellent, thank you. Yeah, May is a great time of year to have a CBRAC meeting.
Yep.
When there's no can basket looking at them.
Right.
Councillor Blanchette?
March 28th and 29th, I joined you here, and on the 29th again, joined you here with the housing meeting with council, and Ms. Narian, and Megan. Vicente, thank you. April 3rd and 10th, we were here doing the interviews, and on April 7th, we had another personal health record meeting. We're closing in, we're narrowing down. It was funny because out of our group, one person didn't have any issues logging in, one person had issues once they got in, and one person couldn't even get in. So it was neat, we're working out all these problems, and all three of us had 3 different issues. So we're trying to get it all done and figured out before we open it up to everybody. And that's everything.
Awesome. Councillor Pearson?
Okay, March 25th, a virtual Trans-Canada Yellowhead Highway Association meeting. On the 29th, I attended a cyber insurance webinar, which was kind of an eye-opener. Most of the cyber crime isn't as malicious as it seemed. I can't remember, it was like 80% or 84% of the entries were by employees clicking on open links and stuff like that versus somebody coming in and, doing an attack on the system. So it was quite an interesting seminar or webinar. 29th also sat in with the housing stakeholder meeting for that discussion. April 3rd and 10th, the in-person CAO interviews, as well as Councillor Blanchette. On the 7th was the Personal Health Record Innovation Lab, working to make this a viable and operative system for everybody. We did have some frustrations with it. So April 8th, I've worked as volunteer at the Legion, but we hosted Alice Olson's family for a birthday dinner for her 99th birthday, and we are currently already in planning for next year.
Good.
April 9th, I attended the Sled Fest on 5th Avenue downtown. Quite a spectacular event. It was very well received and very well attended. And that's it for me.
Thank you. Back into March, I was in Invermere for a couple of days for Columbia Basin Trust on the 25th, and Columbia Basin Trust Board of Directors on the 25th and 26th. March 28th, I was at a VCF and VIP board meeting, as well as a virtual interview with one of our CAO candidates. On the 29th, another virtual interview with a CAO candidate. And on the 29th, received a preview of our housing assessment report. The 31st, I had a briefing with CEO Joel McKay of the Northern Development Initiative Trust around the Northern Healthy Communities Fund. I've handed out a draft letter that I would like to send to Mr. McKay regarding our inclusion. Typically, the Northern Healthy Communities Funds are for communities along the Coastal GasLink route and other larger industrial projects and funding coming from municipal affairs through NDIT, two communities experiencing sort of that explosive growth. And as we were chatting, I said, oh, wow, you want to see explosive growth, Joel? You should see what Trans Mountain's up to. And he's like, write me a letter. So I've written it in draft, and I'd be looking for council approval to have Mr. Mackay advocate on our behalf to the Ministry of Municipal Affairs. Councillor Blanchette, Councillor Pearson, any discussion around that motion?
Well, thank you for that.
We were talking about other things and he brought it up and yeah.
That's how we get things, when people are talking and bringing up issues.
All in favor? It's carried. I'll be sending it later. April 3rd, had an in-person CAO interview with one of our CAO candidates. April 8th, it was a good day. Had a briefing with MLA Bond and the Northern Health Authority around our local healthcare staffing levels. We'll be able to report out soon on that. Later that day or later that morning, had a briefing with Johnny Strelayev, who's the President and CEO of the Columbia Basin Trust around the Universal Broadband Fund. Looking to report out in a bit on that. April 8th, later that morning, I'm meeting with Minister of Citizen Services Lisa Baer and Parliamentary Secretary of Rural Development Rolly Russell in a northern roundtable. Again, connectivity. And then because of our involvement with the Southeast Connectivity Committee, took part in the Southeast Roundtable later that afternoon. April 9th, was able to be severely entertained at the Sledfest show downtown. Mr. Turcotte and Varda put on a terrific show. It was packed. It was packed downtown. And I think, was that our, other than a Best Western / Martin Motorsports, would that be our first event in a couple of years?
2 years, yeah.
So, and it went off great.
Yeah.
A couple of gusts of wind that maybe some of the riders were not anticipating when they're, what, 50 feet in the air? 40 feet in the air?
Oh, at least, yeah, it was pretty spectacular.
Rounded off this report with a in-person interview for one of our CAO candidates on the 10th. Motion to receive. Councillor Blanchette, Councillor Pearson, are there any questions or comments other than the reports? All in favor of receipt? It's carried. And down, we do have opportunities for public comment under 14.1 on items considered by council as part of the approved agenda. Are there any public comments this evening? Just a quick preamble, Ms. Narian, and then we'll be off and running. Following conditions apply to all public comments. Number one, they'll be regarding an item on the current agenda. And if you would, as you are from the podium, so those at home can take part. They should be, must be on topics that are not normally dealt with by village staff as a matter of routine. They will be addressed through myself and answers given likewise. Debates with or by individual members of council or staff are not allowed during this time. No commitments shall be made by council in replying to a question. Matters that may require action of council shall be tabled at a future meeting of this council. Bylaws and temporary use permits that have been considered at a public hearing but have not yet received final approval shall not be raised during this time. Individuals must state their name and just their area of residence. We do not need your address. And comments and questions will be limited to 2 minutes according to that clock. Ms. Narian.
Thank you. I'm Rashmi Narayan and I live in Valemount. I just wanted to comment on Mayor Torgerson's letter about request for the NDIT funding to come to Valemount as well. And it's something actually I'd looked at a year ago and talked to NDIT about. And very much so, being involved with housing, I do see an impact. But at that point, also one of the eligible projects under that communities fund, healthy communities fund or something, is wraparound services for supportive living, which the seniors housing project is about, and would have qualified for some of the funding. So that gives us a double, an extra reason kind of to advocate for that funding. So I was happy to hear that. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other public comments this evening? Motion to receive. Councillor MacLean, Councillor Pearson, all in favor of receipt? It's carried. Now under 15.1, notice to proceed in camera. Recommendation here, the council proceed to an in-camera council meeting for consideration of 4 items per section 91A, E, I of the community charter. To discuss matters related to A, personal information about an identifiable individual who holds or is being considered for a position as an officer, employee, or agent of the municipality, or another position appointed by the municipality. Item E, the acquisition, disposition, or expropriation of land or improvements if the council considers that disclosure could reasonably be expected to harm the interest of the municipality. And I, the receipt of advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose, and we will be looking at 2 items under that. What's council's wish? Councillor Blanchette, Councillor Pearson, all in favor? It's carried. Thank you all.